One student said to me camping that, when you say that we're suffering and we're suffering a lot, I used to be really mad at you for saying that. And, I'm not saying that life is hell and that we're constantly suffering, but more than we really want to admit, there's, for some reason, for most of us, we experience a lot of really subtle discomfort. And it's something that we're not really conscious of, but we really choose and behave differently when we're feeling that little bit of discomfort or a lot of discomfort. I just want to bring the house lights up here. Ooh, that's not up. So to me, this is a very interesting part of our teachings and a very interesting part of our humanity. Because I think that the mistake that we make is that we're thinking that we need life to be a certain way, that we need other people to be a certain way, and then that pain goes away. But it doesn't really work that way. It seems like we are habituated and conditioned into, almost sometimes identified with, a certain level of pain. And it can be very consistent. Pain is always a strange subject because nobody ever really wants to talk about their pain. But it's really when you acknowledge your pain and you bring your attention and consciousness to your pain is how you transmute that pain Am I the only one here that feels discomfort? Yeah. This is a very, very, very common thing. And sometimes it just, when you really start to become aware of it, and you have some time to yourself, say it's on the weekend, it's Saturday, Sunday, you're home, you really just start to notice how these weird sensations start creeping up in you. Even when you're like home doing nothing. Sometimes more when you're home doing nothing, because there are no distractions, and when you're quiet is when you start to feel these things. This is why meditation can be difficult for some people, for a lot of people. Because when the distractions are gone, and when you start to be still, you start to become aware of your own pain. What does it feel like, the pain? Some people want to take a... Oh yeah, there's a mic here and a mic there. If I put them in the back seat, then everybody will sit closer,
I think it varies,
Yeah.
It just depends on the situation. Like, it could be a gentle unease that you don't really know why you're feeling kind of off, feeling kind of gray.
Mm-hmm.
Or there could be something that, someone said or did that I have to sit with upset and just work through it and realize that maybe it's just sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing you could do about it. Like there's different levels depending on what happens. But sometimes it comes out of nowhere and it's just for no reason at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for no reason at all. Geez, at least if you had a reason,
And the best part is having learned that just let it be. You don't have to beat yourself up anymore.
Right.
Why am I feeling this way? Why can't I use my spirituality to get out of it?
Yeah, my practice isn't working.
Yeah, you make it worse.
Yeah.
Pile more crap on you.
Right, right.
And sometimes you just feel blah and blue.
Yeah.
Let it ride.
Yeah.
Ride that wave.
Yeah. Anybody else want to describe it?
I think she's very right. It depends, but sometimes circumstances are too complex to try to suss it out. You know, I was having, I guess what would be, I think, like a panic attack where I felt almost like, honestly, like almost I was like, am I having like a minor heart attack, or like should I go see like a cardio?
Wow.
It was a pressure right, you know, in my chest.
Right.
It really felt like an elephant was sitting, like I was, it was hard to breathe. Like it was, I sat and actually I watched comedies and Mary Poppins and like silly, I let myself just, because there was just, I couldn't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't exercise. I didn't want to eat. And then slowly I realized that there was a circumstance and there was that, I don't know where it's not dissonance, that when your view of the world doesn't fit with, you know, how the world is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to give a specific with my example. I work with individuals that specialize in helping kids with needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so to find out that wherever I go and I kind of move around looking for this clan of people that are going to really love these kids and support these kids, and I keep on just finding more people that are corrupt.
Yeah.
I do also find people that care, but they're not in the position that affects my life in terms of salary and staying there and providing what the kids need. And it just became so disheartening to me that I became immobilized and I couldn't act. So I couldn't look for another job. I couldn't change how I felt about my job. I felt like this was, going on, and I was exhausted. And then kind of like what Sherry said is I blamed myself because I was like, one, why can't I take action? Like action will make me feel better. Just send your resume out. All you have to do, just change a couple lines, send it out. Couldn't get myself to do it. I could not, I was like stagnant.
Isn't that amazing?
And the more stagnant I became, the more I judged myself.
Right.
So, I mean, there was the acknowledgement of like, okay, there's this, what is the word I'm looking for? It's not the ambivalence. I don't know. There's just a mismatch. There's a word that I'm looking for where like really
Dissociated?
No, where like, it'd be like if I trusted you as a meditation teacher and you told me like it would be good for me to go drink alcohol. You know what I mean? It's like it's almost like hypocritical. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, you want to judge these people and you're mad because they affect your life and kids in need. And you're like, how could you do it? Like, and how could this world be letting this happen? And you turn on the news and it's just an echo of that in every frame of the universe,
don't turn on the news.
So, but part of it really was just finally like being like, okay, you can't act. So stop thinking about acting right now.
Yeah.
And just be with it. If you can't even try to distract yourself, because right now you can't even figure it out because you're not seeing clearly.
Yeah.
And it's working itself out. And today I could breathe.
It's the little things, right?
But I don't know.
I've experienced that. You know what I mean? Not often. But, I don't know if I would call it a panic attack, but a panic attacky kind of thing where, you get so upset that you're gasping for air. It's a really strange feeling. Anybody else? Right? It is a weird feeling. And it's hard, like you don't know what to do. And like when you can't breathe, that's not cool,
Well, and that's what I mean. You even get to the point because I was like, maybe I'm just overreading this and I am like literally having a heart attack and should be going to the hospital right now. Anyway.
I would always, let me just recommend on tape that you go to the doctor when that does happen. You know what I mean? Like, Yeah, I know. Yeah, I remember that. Anybody else want to describe it? Well, I mean, listen. It's important that you put it into words. It's because it's part of you coming face to face with it. Don't be shy. And in talking about these things, because everybody's experiencing these things, it will help you have a lot of compassion for the people around you too. Because you'll start to, You really don't know what's going on inside a person, but you know if they're anything like you, that's probably not a lot of fun, right? So,
Well, plus, there's times where it's completely irrational. You know, it's just something pushed your button.
yeah,
And you don't want to share it with other people because you feel you'll be judged.
yeah.
Because no one could possibly understand why you could get upset over something so
Right.
stupid or small. And, you know, so you sit there alone, wallowing, and just try and get through it.
Yeah.
You know, and then it always does pass. That's the thing. You know, just have faith that it's going to pass.
Somehow your state changes
It does.
without you doing anything, right? Here's an interesting thing. You know, what about when you just feel weird for no reason? Like there's no discernible reason for you to be feeling a little bit scared or a little bit off. Yet you feel that way. On a very subtle level I'm talking about. Very subtly. It's just there. I mean, you know, think of it this way. I mean, this world is bound to impermanence and change, right? And all compound things, all things come and go. Everything comes and goes. Nothing is forever. Things are constantly changing. Isn't that a source of discomfort? It can be. You know, the mind is constantly wanting to make concrete and solid a world that has never been concrete and solid. Right? So, you know, I think always of like my cat or animals, you know, when they're always like, you know, my cat who's never had like an adverse experience in his life, you know what I mean? Like if I move too quickly, who all I do is pet him and feed him and love him and take care of him. If I move too quickly, he's like, and I'm like, dude, what are you kidding me? You know, like, did I ever raise a hand to you once? You know, and he's still on his toes, you know? So I think that it's really clear that we all experience this, right? Do we have to be experiencing it, though? Does it have to be there? Well, this is, you know, see, because here's the thing. You know, the first thing is to be very consciously aware that this is happening. Because most people are not consciously aware that this is happening. In other words, you know, there has been this sort of discomfort in us for so long that it just seems normal. One could even say that we become identified as it. We almost don't know who we are without it. And so, when I come and try to take your pain away, you fight me because I'm taking a piece of your identity away. Now, you might not be able to see this in yourself so easily, but you sure as heck can see it in other people, right? Do you know people who, you know, who are very upset and always in their pain, and every time you show them the way out, they jump back into it? It's almost like they're always looking for a reason to be upset because they don't know how to be not upset. And they're identified as it. And when you come and take it away, you're messing with their identity as a person who is in pain. So we don't want to identify with pain. It's absolutely optional. Now, how can I know 100% that it's optional? Who's creating the pain for you? Your mind, right. Your mind is creating it for you. And probably just a conditioned, habitual way of thinking and being. So that's good news. Because you can stop that. You know? You have to first become consciously aware of it. And then understand how to let go of it. It doesn't have to be there. So we're pretty much consciously aware in this room that it's there, right? And even on the most subtle level, there's just some weirdness that can tend to stay with us, right? Probably could call it fear. You know, it's probably some sort of fear. Because there's two basic emotions, love and fear, right? And we know what love feels like. Picture a puppy running at you right now. That's love. So if it doesn't feel like that, you know it's fear. Fear has many code words like anxiety, stress, depression, anger, hatred. Those are all code words for fear. So think about it this way. You're in a world bound to impermanence and change. Everything is always changing. But what does your mind want? Continuity. It wants nothing to change. So you're fighting the weather. You know what I mean by that? It's raining and you're saying, I don't want it to rain. You're not seeing things clearly. You know, one of the things that the monks are very clear about is that all things always change. Everything comes and goes, including you, including me, including ideas or ideas of ourselves. I mean, everything, except one thing. You know, the awareness that is aware of all the changes. That has never changed. But when you look at life, you got to get it. You got to get that everything is temporary. No matter what. You know, when things start going good for you, that's a problem too, right? Because you know in your heart somewhere that they're going to change, and now you're just waiting for it. This is great, but I know it's coming, you know. When's it coming? Here it comes. I'm feeling too good. I'm about to get it. You know, there is a reality here, you know. And a reality, if you're really, truly able to open your eyes to it and embrace it, will make your life so much more fun and help you live without, you know, this day-to-day sort of subtle shempa feeling or upset feeling. You know, the obvious ones when you're in conflict with people or something happened that you didn't want to happen. Those are the obvious ones. But the very subtle ones, you know, that very subtle, mild discomfort that we always seem to feel ourselves in. Doesn't have to be there. But you have to be able to look at this experience squarely and see it clearly with open eyes. And embrace it in your heart. That all things come and go. That nothing ever stays the same, no matter how hard you try. Because such a big part of that subtle discomfort that we feel is just resistance to the natural ebb and flow of things. Is that true for you? Everybody's like afraid to even nod. All right. He asked the question, I'm not going to move a muscle. Don't want him to look at me. Make me talk. It's a weird thing to get present to, though, isn't it? You know? You're going to die someday. Could be today. I don't know. Isn't that weird? I hope it's not. Hope it's not today. But or a small fear of it. You know what I mean? Or a subtle fear of it. You know, we didn't come here, I don't think, to be in fear all the time. We came here to enjoy this life. In some ways we enjoy it, but tonight we're taking a look at the ways that we don't, and how this fear, this subtle fear, how it messes with us. Impermanence is just such the strangest thing. Because we know that things are impermanent, yet we don't embrace that somehow. Cognitive dissonance, right? I mean, ultimately, what's there really to worry about, you know? It's almost like we're in this sort of constant state of discomfort just because of the inherent nature of life, which is constant change. It's just constant change. So, you know, what I'm wanting you to do is to step back and open your eyes and just take a really good look, a very clear look at what you're experiencing as a human being. It's bizarre. Why? Because when you see it clearly, you will be able to enjoy it. You will be able to go through it without this pain, without this discomfort. Perhaps not always, but most of the time. So if we take a look at our misconceptions and our misunderstandings, right? You know, those of you who have been around for a while, what are some of our misperceptions? And there's a lot of them that we've spoken about in here. Misperceptions of how we're perceiving life.
That your thoughts have to mean something.
Yeah.
That they have to have importance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I found myself doing that today, actually, because finally I don't feel like an elephant sitting on me. And so...
Congratulations.
So, yeah. No, but this is what was really fun. So my mind started creating like these alternative realities of, I mean, I won the lotto. I mean, it was great. I opened up my own center. You know, I was going to take the world by its ocean, so to speak. And... even then, I was judging myself. I'm like, why am I thinking such strange thoughts? What's wrong with me that I'm thinking such strange thoughts?
Yeah.
And then I was like, it's because you're in a good mood. What's wrong with you that you're in a good mood? And that would lead you to think strange thoughts. And I was just like, just whatever. Like, just your grocery shopping. Just shop. Just think about how to feed your body. What do you need next? You know, just let them go. Let them go. Like,
just be present.
I mean, and they weren't bad thoughts, but they were like delusions of grandeur. I mean, I was like... I was there, like I won the lotto, and I was like, God, buy the store, and I, you know. Anyway, but just to hold importance to our thoughts, or even in what you're saying, sometimes our emotions, because sometimes you ate a bad meal, you didn't get enough sleep, like it's hot out, and like you're just, yeah. But it doesn't mean that means you need to go to therapy and work on some deep-rooted problem.
Right,
or,
right.
You know.
So one of our most major misperceptions is that we have to always be thinking, and that the thoughts in our minds are important. You know? So can everybody here see that? I mean, if you can't speak up, you know what I mean? Like, your questions really fuel satsang, okay? So don't be shy. Because I know there's always, some of you that have questions that don't ask them, because you always come up to me after satsang and ask your questions.
I think sometimes it depends on personality types, because I notice if somebody's, even like whatever, I guess we had cockroach in our building today or whatever. And I was like, okay, that means, like, I feel like anytime somebody's upset with something and they're telling me, it means they want me to do something about it. Or maybe it's a control freak. Like, I want to fix it to make them better. But then a lot of times the stuff, I mean, it's beyond your control. You can't do anything about it. But I think sometimes, to just to not, necessarily judge other people, just to, like, they might be coming from a sense of fear that might not necessarily be how they would normally react. Like, so I guess just as much as we change, understanding other people are changed and subject to fear and emotions and weird, wacky moods.
Right.
And I've noticed through being through the Peaceful Mind Center, I have a lot more compassion with people by identifying how much I change and how inconsistent I am with this idea of myself when I am in pain. That I can be more forgiving with people or just let it go and be like, all right, they're having a bad day. That has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let their mood affect me. I'm not going to try to fix it. Just let them vent. Let them,
Let them be where they are without judgment. So we can also see then the way that we perceive other people's behavior, we don't see clearly a lot of the time. Or perhaps through our practice, we're now starting to see more and more clearly other people's behavior. So we're seeing clearly, right? The thoughts in our minds are not mandatory. And not even important necessarily. What about time? What about how we perceive time? Is there such a thing as time? I have a no. I have one no, and then a bunch of people. Is your sacrificial lamb?
What I find funny is that I know I do this, and I'm sure that most people do. It's just we're always assuming, and that's the one thing you're never supposed to do. Why that person didn't call you. And I think about the story you shared with us with your sister. She wasn't calling you back, and you worked up this whole fantasy in your head over the course of a week that she was angry with you. So, and I know he won't mind my sharing this with the group, but Sean and I have this thing where he's texting me throughout the day, and he calls me at the end of the day when he's leaving work and texting, throughout the night. I didn't hear a word from him.
Right.
And I thought to myself, you know what, I'm just going to let him be. Maybe he needs some space, and so there was that little part of me in the pit of my stomach that was feeling a little bad, like, why hasn't he texted? Is everything okay? Is he mad at me? And at the very end of the night, I couldn't help it. At 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, I text him and I say, is there a reason that you've been out of touch, all day? And I haven't heard from you? So he texts back that he thought I needed a break from him, that I might need some space. And he wanted to give me space because he thought that maybe he had been getting on my nerves. And he wanted to give me space. And he thought that if I wanted to talk to him, I would reach out.
Right.
And I said, this is like the gift of the Magi. I was texting him, as my friends know, I text long stories, where here it is, I'm thinking, I'm not going to text because he wants space from me. He's not texting because he wants space, and we're assuming.
Yeah.
He's assuming I didn't reach out to him because of, that maybe I didn't want to talk to him, and he's been bugging me, and
Yeah.
I just feel like our perception and our assumptions of why people do the things that they do around us affect us so deeply, and you can never assume.
And did I cut you off? Go ahead.
No, not at all. I felt
Okay.
like I was starting to ramble there.
We create stories in our heads, and we live like those stories are real.
They don't even exist. It's all in our heads.
But if you believe it in your head, it's real for you. That's why when you don't assume, the opposite of assuming is simply asking a question. So I like the way that you responded to him and say, is there a reason that you're out of touch? You didn't get mad. Why didn't you? You know what I mean? Like some people would have really went for the jugular, in that moment, because they would feel.
Dare you not text me and call?
They would feel rejected, and that would create a lot of pain in them. And then when we're in pain, we really lash out. But let's go back to time. Okay? Because this is a huge misperception that time actually exists.
Time as in past and future?
Yeah. There's clock time. I mean, like we know we're going to be here at 7 o'clock so that we can all be here in this moment together. But have you ever been to the past? Just in our heads. Have you ever been to the future? Just in our heads, back in the thought world. So we're living like there is a past and there is a future. But there really isn't, other than thoughts in our heads. And the interesting thing, people might say, well, the past existed, but you know how many times I've remembered the past incorrectly? Like not even close? When I'll talk to my brother and sister about something that happened when we were kids or something, and they have completely different recollections of it. Who's right? Who's wrong? So how much does the past even matter? Because my memory is so bad of it. You can see this sometimes too. Like when you know how like to quote movies, you like to quote movies, and like quoting a movie, and then you watch the movie again and realize that your quote is like completely off. It's it's like so we're wasting our time. That doesn't exist, and in dwelling in past and future, and so like when you were shopping, in the store, your mind was in past and future. I'm going to create this. This is what what I mean. And we're up in our minds and and when we're up in our minds, where are we not? We're not in the present moment. Now, when you're in the present moment, how does it feel? Good. It really does. There's a great peace when you are present. Why? Because when you're present, in order to really be present, past and future have to disappear. Right? Completely. So past and future disappear completely. What problem do you have? We're just sitting here having this conversation. The rest of it is all that mental garbage that we perceive to be important that's not important. In a world that's constantly changing, in a world that never stays the same. The one place we never are is here, which is the only place we ever are, by the way. We suffer the thoughts in our minds. We suffer this misperception that there is time, that there is a future, that there is a past. No, there's not. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be irresponsible, and if I want to have, money saved tomorrow, I have to put money away today. But you're present to putting money away today. But it's always now. It's always right now. And a lot of where this sort of subtle discomfort comes from is when we are not present. Now, here's the thing about being present. You've never been present. Your whole life, your mind is trained to not be present. And so this is a really huge part of your practice, is to be present. You notice sometimes when I guide you through meditation, One of the meditations that I like to use is you bring your attention to your forehead, bring your attention to the muscles around your eyes, bring your attention to your nose and your cheeks, right? And I'm trying to do two things. I'm trying to relax you, right? And I'm trying to guide your attention to where I want it. Where do I want your attention? In the now. So when you bring your attention to your forehead, you're present. When you bring your attention to the experience of breathing, you're present. You're breathing in the now. So I'm trying to help you let go of past and future and stay present in the moment. When you're present in the moment, you'll have a problem. No matter what's happening. But the anticipation and the memories, the imagination and the memories, this is what gets us stirred up. Where am I going to work next year? What am I going to do? And it just gnaws at you. And it creates this discomfort. Do you relate to what I'm saying? So I want you to see, you know what I mean, that how important remaining present is. Remaining present is the keys to the kingdom. When you're present, you're home. When you're present, there's no problem. When the pain or the mild, subtle discomfort comes up in you, and you just stay present to it, you'll notice it begin to dissolve, if not dissolve completely. So much runs in our subconscious. So much runs under our radar. When I say subconscious, I would rather use the term unconscious. You know what I mean? This is being created unconsciously. We would never create discomfort for ourselves consciously, right? And so I'm inviting you to see it clearly and to bring consciousness to it. So in order to bring consciousness to it, we have to see really clearly our misperceptions. We have to see really clearly when the discomfort is there and be very careful not to let our mind go jawing about it. Because remember, being present to something, be very, 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 very clear about this. Okay, I want you to really hear this. Okay? Being present to something is not thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? You got to get that. Being present to something, it's not that you'll never think. It's not that, you won't use your mind as a tool. But if you're saying, I'm very present to my pain, and God, where does this pain come from? And I don't know. When I was a kid, my mom hit me with a strap, blah, blah, blah. And you're back in your head. You're gone. When you're present to it, when I'm just present to my pain, okay? All I am is aware that sensation is there. And all I'm trying to do is be aware of the sensation. And you'll find it's a little cat and mouse game sometimes, because when you bring your attention to it, it tends to fade away. Then it pops up over here. And then it fades away and it pops up over here. And because the more that you look at it, it's not something that you're wanting to create for yourself consciously. So you look at it and may perhaps, without thinking about it, you can sort of invite it to relax, Mind, we don't need to create this. And you find it start to break up. It breaks up when you're shining the light of your consciousness on what is unconscious. And that's really the purpose of what I'm speaking with you about tonight. Because we all experience this discomfort. Probably a lot more than we're willing to admit. Okay? So what do you do with this discomfort? Most people run from it. whether subtly or not so subtly. Some people drink and do drugs and do things like that. Some people watch too much TV, whatever. But when the discomfort arises, it's a sort of a natural reflex to somehow want to placate that discomfort. Eat ice cream. Smoke a cigarette. So, instead of placating the discomfort, instead of feeling like something is wrong, that the discomfort is there, just allow the discomfort. Don't think about the discomfort. Bring the attention to the discomfort and watch what happens.
Sometimes.
I brought attention to discomfort.
Would you use the mic, please?
Yeah, because they're listening to me, probably watching. My friends are probably watching. I brought attention to discomfort, and it just created a complete mess in my head.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
There was discomfort that I was feeling.
Physical discomfort?
No, mental, something occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And I just made it spin out of control in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But I brought attention to it, but not in a good way, I don't think. Because it just kept snowballing.
I think that the difference is, remember when I just said that when you're being present to it does not mean that you're thinking about it. Okay? Now the tendency of the mind, particularly to a newer practitioner, is going to be to want to think our way out of negative thinking. Okay? Which is like throwing gas on a fire. The difference between that and what I'm describing to you is that you're just watching it as if you were watching it on a movie screen, and you're not identified as it, and you're not involved in it. You're just aware of what the mind is doing. Okay? For a newer practitioner who hasn't heard me say a million times that you are not your thoughts, you are the one that is aware of the thoughts, it's easier for you to get in sort of a fencing match with your mind, dealing with your mind on the level of mind. Trying to think your way into good thinking. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about dealing with mind on the level of mind. I'm talking about realizing that I am the one that is aware of the circus going on in my head, and I'm just watching it without any interest, really, allowing it to act out whatever it's doing, and not jumping in the middle and getting punched in the face.
So when you're in the middle, getting punched in the face, you just take yourself back and watch?
Yes. You see, what's happening when you're getting punched in the face, like the only way that thoughts can bother you is when you're identified as them. Do you understand what I mean by that? In other words, if these thoughts are me, then I can't get away from them. Because they're me. You know what I mean? How can I get away from me? But when you realize, and this will happen gradually over time, and in practice you will experience this for yourself. Now you will know it cognitively, you will have a mental understanding of it. But when you experience it directly, it will be very different for you. Okay? And so, what begins to happen is you begin to realize that no matter what's going on in my mind, it's not me. This is just some jabber going on in my mind that I am aware of. You understand what I mean? And now, if this is the jabber in my mind that I'm aware of, now I can just look away from it. Essentially, just ignore it. But you have to realize that there's a you that can ignore what's happening in the mind. For most of us, we are in very much a mind-identified state. Okay, meaning that the thoughts in our mind are us, and they're very important. And I'm here, to help you burn that in the fire. Because that is a complete misperception of what is true. And I can demonstrate that so clearly, If the thoughts in your mind stop for 10 seconds, there's no thoughts in your mind, do you disappear? No. So you can see that you are not dependent on thoughts. But we are identified as thoughts. Do you know, hey, thanks, Sean. Thanks for checking in. Sean is saying hi. The thoughts, like when you're identified as the thoughts in your mind, they are you. And this is such a very weird part of the process, is like when you're realizing, no, these thoughts are not me. Because then that sort of begs the question, well, what is me? And I think that is the ultimate question in spirituality. When I say I, what am I pointing to? Am I pointing to my thoughts? Am I pointing to my body? Which I know is 99% space. There is an awareness that is aware of the thoughts in the mind. There is an awareness that is aware of the discomfort being generated by the mind-body. There is an awareness that is aware when you're hungry. There's an awareness that is aware when you get bit by a mosquito. But when that awareness gets tangled up as, the thoughts in the mind, then you can't get away from the thoughts in your mind. And that's, what, and it escalates. And so you have to know the difference between truly sitting as the awareness, realizing the awareness, and observing the mind, and dealing with mind on the level of mind. Trying to talk yourself into a peaceful mind. Having some sort of boxing match going on in your head that you're trying to win. And that's just the mind arguing with the mind. Imagine that, like how much fun is that, right? That now my mind's got a little war going on with itself. The war is observed too. Who is the one observing the war? The self. Now it's easy to say the self, but where you realize the self is in your practice. And you have been identified as the thoughts in your mind your whole life. So to let go of that is not something that we are very willing and eager to do. Because we really are invested in this mental formation that we have created around who we are and what we are and all of these things. But another huge, misperception. The mind calls itself I. The body calls itself I. The self calls itself I. You have to be careful. The mind can masquerade as the self. The mind, the ego, can jump in and hijack your spirituality so that, and use your spiritual teachings to get what it wants. Do you know what I mean by that? Can justify bad behavior, you know? Well, Tom said none of this matters, and I'm just present. I don't need to worry about the future, so I'm just going to go spend all my money, and, you know.
I don't know if it was like this for Antoinette, but I find that when my thoughts start to spiral out of control and start a loop where you're replaying something over and over in your head, it's the emotions that it starts to evoke is where I get into trouble. You know, it starts to bring, my heart starts pounding, and so you're caught in this loop in your mind of the thoughts rolling around over and over, and it's almost like time stands still. You're taken away to, you know, an event or something that's going on, and you're upset, and you're sitting there and you're upsetting yourself, and at some point you just have to say enough. All right, enough. I need a break. And if it takes getting out of the house and going for a walk, if it takes, you know, putting on some music or the TV for a distraction, just something to distract you from the thoughts for a while so you can get yourself under control.
Yeah.
And realize that you're the one causing it. You know, whatever event or whatever thing happened is over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's stuff that doesn't even happen.
Yeah, it didn't even happen.
You work yourself up over nothing.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're losing your mind. At some point, you have to say, all right, enough, and do something to break that cycle in that moment.
That is exactly what I'm talking about. What you said right there, when you said it's the emotions that come up, that's what I mean when I'm saying pain, when I'm saying discomfort, what you're calling emotions. When that discomfort comes up, it starts driving the bus. We are different people when we are in pain. And that's why these discussions on this discomfort, on this pain, on these emotions, all same thing to me, okay? You know, different words, different distinctions for the same sort of subtle discomfort. You know what I mean? And that's why we have to become present to this discomfort, because that's what it does to your mind. When you start feeling that discomfort, that's when you start running at your mind starts running and all this weirdness starts happening, because you're trying to placate those emotions, that discomfort that's coming up, and you're trying to do it mentally. But you end up just really muddying the water and making a bigger problem out of it when you're trying to think your way out of negative thinking. You know, it's funny. When you're not in pain and you're walking down the street, you're like, oh my God, the world is just such a beautiful place, and look at that bird, and you're so pleasant, and you're so love is just coming out of you. But when you feel pain, that's when you're different. And you feel pain most of the time, more than you know. We're used to the macro pain. You know what I mean? Like the big, oh my God, I'm getting punched in the stomach. I'm in so much pain. That's obvious. I'm talking about the subtle, little, mild pain. You know, the emotion, that little emotion that's there, and all of a sudden the mind starts. It's a very interesting phenomena that happens, that the mind, when you start to feel that discomfort, you know, just somehow that gives the mind license to do whatever it wants. There's mind when you're not in pain and mind when you're in pain. Not the same mind. So we have to bring our attention to our discomfort and just kind of be with it and allow it without thinking about it. We've got to get used to not thinking about it. Because once we start thinking about it, this is what you get. You get a
shit show.
yeah, it is. And then you get in this negative feedback loop. I'm thinking negative thoughts that are creating negative feelings, that are creating more negative thoughts, that are creating more negative feelings, and you want to throw up, literally. And like you said, over something that you don't even know why. Something that didn't even happen. This is a conditioned, habitual way of being. This is clearly not happening consciously. No one here desires that mess. And so we've got to bring consciousness to it. You've got to be aware that the discomfort is there. Perhaps one of the ways to realize that the discomfort is there is what the mind is doing. Hey, my mind's getting a little haywire. What am I feeling? How can I change my state? So what are some of the ways that you can change your state quickly? Go exercise. Number one, exercise for real. Like, I became a personal trainer and started a career in exercise just for this reason. A movie, you'll notice that will just bring your attention somewhere else. Breathe, yeah, in case you're not breathing. Yeah, like conscious deep breathe, like how sometimes we breathe in a cycle. You know what an interesting one is? Take a hot shower. Yeah. That's one of my favorite. Really changes my state when I take a hot shower.
When you're feeling kind of down, take a shower.
Yeah. I take a lot of showers now. I feel good after a shower. What a simple, for a guy it's a little different, I guess. For me it's like a glorified washing my face and hands. But it's just something that I just feel so much better when I come out of the shower and I'm nice and clean, and it just puts me in a good state. Think about when you come out of the shower. Don't you feel good? Something that simple. Yeah, it's just something that simple. And I encourage you to have a list of things that you do to change your state when your mind is coming off the rails. Because when your mind is coming off the rails, you're not going to remember any of this stuff. Meditating might be difficult in that moment, but you can do mantra. Mantra will really cut through that. Just chanting Om. There's some recordings that we use, some things I can recommend.
YouTube has a million. Just pull one up.
Yeah. But if you have like a mantra that like remember when you're chanting mantra, you know what I mean, that you really want to say it loudly and let it vibrate your body. It's soothing. And that mantra, the mantra is translated a lot of different ways, but one of the ways that I really appreciate is gatekeeper. Okay? And so mantra is like the gatekeeper to your mind, gatekeeper to the thoughts in your mind, right? So when your attention is on the mantra, your attention is not on the garbage in your mind. There's a mantra that I learned when I was studying Vajrayana Buddhism called Vajrasattva purification, or mind purification. And just one recitation of that mantra takes me a little over a minute. And but I've just found it to be extraordinarily useful, particularly when my mind is really acting up. So you're seeing what's happening is that there's this subtle discomfort. When there's subtle discomfort, it poisons our thoughts a little bit somehow. And then when the thoughts get poisoned, then there's a little more discomfort. And there we go. So you have to be aware as a human being that this is happening. Okay, the first thing that you have to do is be aware that this is even happening. Because most people aren't even aware that it's even happening. Okay, so just spend some time, just as you're going through your day, just sort of noticing when there's a subtle discomfort in you. Just notice that, it's there. Why? I'm making breakfast. It's a nice morning. What is the weirdness? Okay, just notice that it's there. The more that you bring your consciousness to it, the more you sort of like starve it. You know what I mean? these things work in the shadows. When you bring them out in the light, there's just nothing there. Notice some of the causes of, or some of the effects of those feelings. When your mind is feeling weird, when you're maybe being snippy with people, or, you know what I mean? You feel yourself becoming angry. You know, we want to bring consciousness to driving this human mind-body bus down the road. Lots of variables, lots of things to consider, you know? But we can see very plainly how things are developing inside us that we don't want or intend to develop, and yet it's just sort of happening automatically. So it's an important part of your practice to just sort of monitor, to just sort of notice, because you can live without that. That's the good news, you know? Is it doesn't have to be there. If it is there and you can't break it up, then just let it be there and be aware of it. But as we more and more bring our consciousness to this part of our humanness, you know, we can certainly transform it. I think the big parts of that are: 1, be aware of it. 2, realizing that you are not the thoughts and you are not the pain. You are the one aware of those things. You're watching what the mind-body is doing, and you are aware of what the mind-body is doing. And it is doing it on its own, without your input. Well, now you're going to have some input. Now you're going to look and you're going to say, okay. Whatever you're doing, mind-body, you don't hide it from me anymore. Okay? Bring it front and center and just let me see it. Can we let this go? Do we need for this feeling to be here? I don't think we do. Let's let it go. And you start to notice that it starts to go away. You're bringing consciousness to an unconscious process that's happening inside you. And an unconscious process that's probably happening just due to conditioning and habituation. And very importantly, identification. Don't be identified as a person who's in pain all the time. Don't identify yourself as someone who is screwed up or hurt all the time or upset all the time or off the rails all the time or anything like that. Don't take that on as an identity. That's when it will be the hardest for you to let go of. Realize that you're not that person. You know? Does that part of it make sense, that last segment? It just becomes like an identity. And I'm someone who's always upset. And then next thing you know, you're just always upset and you're grabbing onto it, you know, because it's an identity. Now, I don't know how else to say it, so I'll just keep repeating identity over and over again. It becomes an identity. It becomes what you are, and you don't know what you are without it. And so even if it starts to go away, you go looking for it and you pull it back. You know what I mean? Like that's the strange thing about being identified with something is that you don't know who you are without it. You don't know, who am I without all of this pain and all of this upset? Who am I? I've only known myself to be in pain and upset. Who am I without it? And that's where it becomes a problem. You don't know who you are without it. This is a very important point. You know, being identified with pain. I'm a person who is in pain. When it's you, how do you get rid of it? You have to realize that it's not you. Don't be identified as pain. Don't be identified as a person who is in pain. This is who I am. No. It's habituation, wiring. You are the one that is observing it. Have I made it clear? Okay. Is it useful to you? Yeah. It is. It is.
You say it so clearly, but it's
Hard from the inside out. You know what I mean?
Going through it, when you're having that dark night, just
Yeah.
to know what the hell to do.
Yeah. Just observe. Don't think about it. You know? Just observe. Don't think about it. You know, like you really have to get that separation between the awareness, the self, and the mind. That's what's got to be pulled apart. And even when the mind is going bonkers, you know, then you can still just kind of watch that and be like, okay, that's what's happening right now in my mind, but when you lose interest in those things, they lose interest in you. But the first thing is just to not in a way that you're like fomenting it, okay? Be careful of that. You just want to be aware that that discomfort is present. The more that you can see the discomfort in its more subtle levels, you know, it's a lot easier to change the more subtle it is. You know what I mean? Once it comes into big discomfort, that's when you got to go for the bourbon, you know? But we're wanting to monitor and observe ourselves on a much subtle level, on a much more subtle level, and just be aware when subtly I'm slipping into a little discomfort, you know? Kind of monitoring yourself the whole time. Any questions? Comments? All right. Does anybody need to use the restroom or anything before we meditate? Anybody like to stand up and stretch? Oop, yeah, use the other door. Okay. Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Oh, good. All right. Tell them I said hi. You know what? And if anybody wants a cushion, feel free to come up. You know, and just and just while we're waiting for some people to come back, I think that one of the strangest things of being human is the pain that we create for ourselves ignorantly. You know? I think that's one of the weirdest, you know, like feeling the pain that that we don't want, like creating the pain that we don't want to feel. And we don't know how to stop doing that to ourselves. Yeah? It's, you know, the most complex object in the universe is sitting on your shoulders. And so learning how to manage and work with the most complicated object in the universe, you know, takes a little doing. So just stay with it, keep trying. Bring your questions here, you know. Satsang is a place for you to ask questions that I can answer. So practice. You're going to have questions. Bring your questions, okay? Let's see now.